Nebraska eviction laws vary from county to county, but they still follow the same general eviction process. Fill out the forms, serve the tenant, attend the trial, wait for judgment. Every eviction process is different and depending on the lease or rental agreement signed by the tenant and the landlord. In this video, we will detail a summary for landlords to refer to when evicting a tenant. Please be sure to confirm procedures with your justice court to ensure the entire process goes as smoothly as possible. So with that being said, let's get started. Let's begin by going over some common eviction reasons. Number 1, failure to comply with rent deadlines. Rent is usually considered a day late past its due. A grace period may be available if stated in the given lease or rental agreement. Before a landlord can start the eviction process, the landlord must give the tenant an official written notice, called a 7-day notice to pay. Providing a notice is crucial to the eviction process. Number 2, violation of the lease or rental agreement. The lease has to be upheld by both the tenant and the landlord for the entire duration of their stay. Agreements may vary from tenant to tenant. If a tenant violates any terms from the lease agreement, the landlord must give the tenant a written notice called a 30-day notice to comply. The tenant has 14 days to fix this issue or else the eviction process does not continue. Lease violations may include damage to the rental unit, smoking in non-smoking areas, keeping pets in pet-free properties, etc. A day or more of not throwing out trash for long periods of time, inviting bugs and rodents, damaging the electrical wiring of a unit, and ruining the plumbing fixtures of a unit. If the violations are not resolved or they remain on the property within the given 14 days, then the tenant has until the end of 1 month to move out of the property. The 14-day grace period cannot be extended. Number 3, conducting illegal activity. Landlords have the right to evict a tenant for illegal activity. If a tenant has engaged in illegal behavior within the property, the landlord must issue an official written eviction notice called a 5-day notice to quit. Examples of illegal activities are theft, violence, assault, possessing or firing an illegal firearm, involvement in the creation, distribution, or consumption of a controlled substance. If any of this also applies to a guest or co-resident living within the tenant commits illegal acts. However, this does not apply if the tenant filed a restraining order against said guest or co-resident. Number 4, non-renewal of the lease after the rental period ends. In Nebraska, landlords must not evict a tenant or force them to vacate the property without a probable clause. As long as the tenant does not commit any violations, they can stay until their rental period ends. But if they stay in the property even a day after the rental period ends and have not arranged for renewal, landlords must issue a written notice to move. Filing a complaint. How to file a complaint. The process for eviction action can only begin after the issuance of the appropriate written notice. Enough notice time must have been allowed before filing for eviction. The process for eviction is as follows. Proceed to the justice court the rental unit belongs to, file a complaint, pay the fees. Make sure you are in the right justice court. The landlord must file an official complaint before proceeding to the next step. Timeline. It takes about 7 to 30 days from the issuance of the notice to vacate or quit. Notice to comply. Before filing for an eviction with the court, you need to issue the tenant a notice to comply. Serving the tenant. How to serve a tenant. This step involves serving a tenant with the documents. An official from the court needs to deliver the summons for the hearing and the complaint to the tenant. The county sheriff's office is usually assigned to this task or someone who is uninvolved in the case. The documents have to be served within the 3-day allowance. This countdown starts from its issuance from the court. 3 days shouldn't be extended. There are several methods available: personal service, substituted service, mailing, posting, and mailing. After serving the summons and complaint, the tenant has at least 7 to 11 days before the eviction hearing to prepare. Timeline. The court order must be served to the tenant within 3 days of issuance from the court. Asking for possession. Next procedure if the tenant disagreed and replied. In the state of Nebraska, a reply from the tenant is not needed for a court date to be scheduled. They only have to show up to the hearing on time. The landlord must support the claim with evidence or information and show it during the hearing. This could include, but is not limited to, the following: copy of the deed and the lease, rent receipts and ledgers, bank statements, witnesses, photo and video documentation of the violations, filing a motion to obtain judgment and get a judgment for possession. This step involves winning the case. The landlord must provide a strong argument backed up by solid evidence against the tenant. If the tenant fails to show up to the hearing, the landlord wins by default. Timeline. Eviction hearings are scheduled 10 to 14 days after the summons and complaint was issued. Getting possession. After the landlord wins the case. Provided that the tenant fails to appeal for reconsideration, a writ of restitution is issued a few hours to a few days. The landlord must request for the issuance of the writ of restitution. The writ of restitution gives the tenant a maximum of 10 days to evict themselves from the premises. Otherwise, they will be forcibly evicted by the county sheriff or the proper authorities. Move out process. Once the writ of restitution is issued, the tenant has to move out from the premises within the given 10 days. They must move out before then. Only the sheriff or the appropriate authorities are allowed to remove the tenant by force. Even if the landlord wins the case, they are not allowed to engage in illegal methods of eviction. The state of Nebraska does not specify what to do with the tenant's belongings. If any belongings are left behind, landlords are advised to contact the tenant and give them a reasonable time frame to claim them. After the date from the time frame has passed, the property of the tenant may be sold or disposed of. Timeline. The tenants have 10 days upon the issuance of the writ to vacate the property. Time is of the essence. Nebraska eviction timeline. On average, it may take anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks for a complete eviction process. Showing evidence. How to keep good records. If the tenant disagrees with the eviction request and they reply to the court, it's important that you keep extremely good records of everything so you can provide proof to the judge and win your case. This part can make or break your entire eviction process in the event of a dispute. You can stay organized by keeping a physical paper trail, scanning documents, backups, and property management software. Evidence to show for not paying rent. If the tenant doesn't pay rent and they dispute that claim, it's important that you show the judge the following: your lease agreement, all payments, any payment returns, and all messages. Evidence to show for lease violations. If you are evicting the tenant for lease violations, for example, noise complaints or unauthorized pets, it's important to show proof from any of the following methods: security cameras, photos and videos, and your lease terms. And that's a wrap for today's video on the Nebraska eviction process. We hope you found this video informative and insightful. But hold on, there's still more to uncover about the eviction process in Nebraska. If you want to explore this topic even further, we've got you covered. In the description below, you'll find a link to a detailed blog post that dives deep into the eviction process in the state of Nebraska. It covers everything from notice requirements and legal proceedings to tenant rights and landlord responsibilities. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.